Welcome to Campus Speaks, Hear Their Story. I'm your host, Doug Magnuson. Today we'll be exploring jazz and a little of the history behind the music with Mr. Michael Pond Jones. Welcome to Campus Speaks, Michael.
Thanks for having me, Doug.
So let's start off with some easy ones, like what first drew you to music?
Believe it or not, a lot of people start out playing in band or singing and choir, maybe in fourth, fifth, sixth grade, something like that. I played trombone for about 3 months in fourth grade, and I quit band. I got really tired of lugging this thing. I lived 5 blocks from school, and I got tired of carrying it to school, so I quit band, which was a bad call. Now, I found myself, going into high school. Of course, I'm taking care of academics. I'm trying to be a good student, but I'm also looking for something to do that's kind of a group activity, So I'm thinking like, all right, I'll maybe look at Scholastic Bowl, look at the chess team. When you're a freshman, you're trying to figure out what you like and what you want to do. And I still had this trombone, so I was kind of messing around with this trombone in between 8th and 9th grade. And we knew the director at Belleville West, where I teach. I went to high school at Belleville West, and we knew the family. We knew Dr. Thomas Berkner. And my mom called him one day and said, hey, can Michael join band? He's looking for something to do, And he said, sure. So I got in band in 9th grade, and I couldn't read music yet. And over the next 4 years, I had a really immersive, high-quality environment where I had a lot of inspiration and there were a lot of good people in the band. And the jazz band, particularly, is a place where you play your own part from day one. You can't lean on someone else to help you do your job. Your job is your job.
There's no hiding.
No. So in jazz ensemble, when maybe by the middle of sophomore year, I started gaining some traction. I went to some jazz camps. I started really appreciating the human element. I'd say loving the human element of playing music with a bunch of other people. It's so collaborative, it's so positive, it's so democratic, because what everyone brings to the performance really matters. So that's ultimately why I decided to just stay in music. I had thought about being an aeronautical engineer for a long time. I love airplanes, and I also, wanted to be a medical doctor for a bit, but ultimately, like the human aspect, participating in like the best and sometimes even the worst parts of people's lives, like that got me playing. And jazz is certainly like the most individualistic and democratic and arguably expressive art that I can find within the idiom of music. So yeah, I keep doing it. I love it.
Is it possible, can you define jazz for us?
No. No, I not at all. But I'll say a few things about jazz that I hold as truths. I think jazz it's America's art form, and I think a lot of people who, are much wiser and maybe more professorial than me, people who do a lot of research and write a lot, they would agree with that the jazz is America's art form. It's our indigenous oral art form. And everything in the United States that comes after jazz, I'd also argue is still jazz. Whether it's maybe funk and soul and R&B, maybe it's all the prodigious catalog that comes out of Stax Records or Sun Records. Like all of that music couldn't have existed if we wouldn't have had all of these folks who were influenced by the generations of people who were coming out of New Orleans. So maybe that's me taking a stand, and then that could be future debate and argument, which I always enjoy. But jazz is America's art form, and everything that's American is inherently within that tree of jazz.
Well,
is that what you're digging on that?
Yeah, I'm following with you, and we'll follow up with that a little bit later, I think, too. There's some things I want to ask you about. But your primary instrument is bass trombone. It's not the lead instrument that you see a lot of jazz people playing. It's not this tenor sax. It's not the clarinet. It's not the regular, just straight trombone. Can you explain a little bit about why you love the bass trombone and kind of explain it to our audience a little bit?
Sure. I'll tell you how I got on bass trombone. Sometimes when you're a kid, you don't necessarily know how a decision's made or how you come up onto something, but I have a pretty wide face. All right, I have a big noggin. It's a big cranium. Um, so when I was playing a tenor trombone, we call them pea shooters. Just a little bitty 8-inch bell, and maybe mine was a little bit smaller. And I'd have to play like this because the slide was so narrow. You see, it goes out and comes back in, and so I was kind of having to play with my head torqued one way or the other just to get my mouth, kind of to the middle of the mouthpiece. So I was rummaging around in the back of the band room one day, and I found a trombone that had a wider slide. And I asked my director, "You mind if I play this?" And he said, "Yeah, that's great." Little did I know that that's how you end up playing bass trombone. Now, the bass trombone has a distinctive function, especially once we get into the middle of the 20th century within jazz. We have George Roberts out on the West Coast, laying down like distinctive bass trombone sounds, and then we have Bill Reichenbach and Dave Taylor, all these bass trombone players. We hear them every day, and we don't know, and that's the sound. And as time went on, I got a real bass trombone. It has all the pipes. And I realized, like, wow, this is something that makes me like able to really contribute to a band. And then I was set. I had my instrument. It's kind of like being a contrabassoon player. That's something that's special that you can do. And I got to be a little different by being the only guy in the room who was playing the bass trombone.
Is there a style or composer or type of jazz that you just love to play, or does it depend on the moment?
It always depends on the moment, and I'd say that as I've lived life, everything's kind of equalized because you study music more deeply as time goes on, and I've tried to crawl into the minds of a lot of these composers, so now I kind of appreciate, even if it's something I don't like at the outset, I get really, really excited to learn how the music was made. So it's hard for me to like find something that I say is my favorite thing. But I will tell you some things early on that I listened to, maybe a couple albums that like really, really set me on my way. One of them was a pretty new record. I bought it was a Barnes and Noble back in the day. Does that make me kind of like older now that I bought a piece of media from Barnes and Noble? But I got this album. It's called Old School New Lessons, the Bob Mincer Band. Bob Mincer's a tenor saxophone player, but Dave Taylor was the bass trombonist on that album. And that album came out my senior year of high school. And I tried to be Dave Taylor for the next 3 years. And that got me going. So I guess at the outset, I liked Count Basie as well. All the stuff like Live at the Sands. That album got me going. So Count Basie and Bob Mincer, Bob Mincer's music was at least 30 years newer, so along the path, down the branch, so to speak, in jazz. But both those albums, they really made me happy.
Well, we've asked you to play a couple of pieces for us, and the first one you're looking at is by Dave Brubeck.
David William Brubeck.
David William Brubeck, sorry.
Right, not to be confused with the jazz pianist.
Yes. When the Saints Go Marching In, Stereogram number 35. Can you explain a little bit about Stereogram to us?
With stereo, we have one sound and another sound, right? And I'm not an audio tech by any means. I'm a bass trombonist, but you have one sound and another, and they coalesce and they provide like a spatial atmosphere, and that's kind of a silly way to describe it, I suppose. But the idea with these pieces is you can play the piece, and there are kind of two distinctive voices in it. So, part of it's in one tessitura, part of it's in another of the instrument, and I'm kind of like playing my own accompaniment. So maybe there's a bass line and a melody pops out, or maybe there's a melody and every once in a while the bass line pops out. And it's a lot of fun, especially, during COVID. We might not have as many opportunities to collaborate with other musicians.
Well, we'd like to hear that one now. That'd be all right with you.
All right, I'll do my best.
Well, since we did When the Saints Go Marching In, it kind of leads me to my next question. It's commonly known that jazz grew out, its roots came from black culture. But how and where was jazz born?
I think jazz is a culmination of creativity and honestly centuries of growth. I think all art forms start as an experimentation, that's kind of aimed towards growth of an existing art form. So jazz starts with the African slave trade, bringing Africans to the Caribbean, and also, we look at the French and Spanish colonial endeavors at the time, bringing Western harmonies into the same region. And as Africans are transported into New Orleans, a really large port city, and we have this coalescing of French and Spanish and African musical ideas, over decades and decades, we end up making jazz. I think that that jazz, is the natural progression of trying to make something out of a lot of rules that came prior. So we have the European harmonies, and we have African rhythms, and every Sunday, slaves are allowed to congregate in a place called Congo Square, which is kind of a market where they can exchange goods, ideas. I suppose, it's terrible, but Sundays they were given just the smallest amount of freedom, which is really no freedom at all. But Sundays were a day of rest, and Christianity is the predominant culture at the time in New Orleans, and everyone's allowed to take Sunday off to some extent. At Congo Square, music, ideas, goods, everything's traded. Congo Square is no one's really quite sure where it is, but everyone thinks it's right off Rampart Street, right next to the Municipal Auditorium. And that whole area has been turned into Louis Armstrong Park at this point. Now, that once the Louisiana Purchase, right? That happens in 1803. I'm not a
Somewhere in there.
I'm not a historian in general, but my understanding is that the participation at Congo Square wanes over time from the Louisiana Purchase to the Civil War, and it ended at some point. But after the Civil War, we have this proliferation of availability of instruments like aerophones, like cornets, trumpets, and all kinds of valved instruments. Instruments we wouldn't necessarily see today, but you might see them in a British-style brass band to this day, like alto horns, tenor horns, baritones, tubas. Those instruments are kind of available at the time. So all this that had been happening for a couple hundred years in New Orleans, this cosmopolitan nature of New Orleans now gets instruments, and now jazz isn't just vocal and rhythmic, but we have instruments involved now too. And I suppose the rest is history.
There's a lot of influence from a lot of other cultures. I mean, you started to mention Spanish, but the Latin rhythms of Cuba,
Right.
The Caribbean rhythms. I mean, how many other cultures have added their flavor to our American jazz?
Well, I'd like to say that, like, since jazz, especially through the 20th century, has been spread across the world in so many ways, like through radio, through television, that we've also absorbed a lot of the culture of the rest of the world into jazz. Jazz is one of our newest idioms, one of our newest ways to perform music. And it takes our 12-tone system that's predominant across all Western music, and it takes it to its zenith of creativity. And I think the United States, because of our melting pot, the melting pot nature of our country, both all the good, bad, and ugly that comes from people moving around, is absolutely 100% good when it comes to the exchange of information and music.
Well, I know that I saw something that I hadn't seen ever before. I saw a video not long ago, a jazz solo done on bagpipe.
Yeah.
And I thought that wasn't going to work. And I watched it, and it was phenomenal. So to have Scottish jazz, I think, is getting a worldwide appreciation of our art form.
Yeah, well, and jazz, especially like with the advent of the television, we stopped dancing to jazz. It became something that we started putting on a stage after World War II. And we can talk about that a little bit later.
Well, I was going to say, you've got the evolution, and then the dividing line between things like big band, klezmer, blues, soul, jazz. I mean, they all grow out of jazz, right? Or were some of these forms existing? Like, I don't know where klezmer came from.
Well, I think klezmer and jazz, like I said a little bit earlier, are the first iteration of like creativity trying to build on something that came before it. And then as like a style matures a little bit, it becomes like ingrained in culture. It becomes part of what people do to experience life together. And then eventually, as we see an art form mature, we start writing it down a little bit.
Yeah.
So especially post World War II, there was like a klezmer revival in the 70s and the 80s, and the music started being written down. And now you can learn about it in universities. And same thing with jazz. Jazz entered the university for the first time only in 1948. So it was viewed as something that's like, it's over there. It's not the real music yet. Because it was still kind of experimental and a lot of people hadn't bought into it. But Stan Kenton pushed for jazz to enter the schools, and the University of North Texas in the late 40s was the first school to have a codified jazz program.
Well, that leads me in because I've talked to a lot of the musicians and the music instructors that I work with here, and they talk about how at their universities, when they were doing their undergrad or their grad work, the jazz people weren't often seen in the same buildings as them. They spent a lot of time at the clubs playing jazz, doing jazz, but there was a definite difference between the traditional music education and the jazz education. Right. But do you think it's important that a student learns a traditional music first and then gets into jazz, or would it be more beneficial to go jazz first?
I think it's okay either way. I really do. And I also think that even if you start with jazz, and you're learning it from one of your folks at home, eventually your interest in what's going on in the music will be so high if you're striving towards the really high levels of performance that you're going to seek out, that academia a little bit. You're going to try to learn as much as you can in as many ways as you can. So I think it's going to eventually happen anyway. And jazz has become, in the last, especially the last couple of generations, highly academic. You know, just about every regional university out there, liberal arts college, they're offering some kind of program that at least involves jazz, if not confers a degree. So it'll happen either way these days.
Do you think it's difficult for a student who's been raised or has come through a traditional music education to kind of embrace and I use this with air quotes, the looseness of jazz?
I see that all the time, all the time. Sometimes folks get wrapped up in the sheet music in front of them so much, you know, it's almost like they're using it as a crutch because they know that that will lead them towards a right answer. But jazz is inherently creative. There's a lot of times there's no right or wrong answer. There are just answers that maybe are a little more right, you know. And I like to view our instruments as like the amplifier of our creativity, you know. So when I started out as a trombone player, thinking back to my 14, 15-year-old self, I couldn't even reproduce what was on the page, you know. But now at the ripe old age of 33, sometimes I get to the point where I can sing something, and then I can play it on my horn. Yeah. You know, so like we're on that, you know, path, and you know, we just have to view the instrument as what like amplifies our thoughts, our creativity, and using music as a crutch has hindered a lot of people from taking that first solo. The fear ends up being crippling. You know, when I talk to my freshmen and my sophomores at Belleville West, a lot of times, you know, it takes a lot to get that first solo out, and we always start with one note. Play one note that'll work for the whole chorus, and make it rhythmically interesting, and we go from there.
Well, that leads me to my next line of questioning about the thing that kind of makes jazz stand out over a lot of different forms, which is the solo and the giving and taking of solos, and you know, within a given piece. And when you get to the highest levels in the end of the jazz bands and the jazz orchestras that I've seen, it becomes very organic and truly improv. You know, they're not following any scripted thing. What goes into creating those solos, and how do you approach it?
I think it's awesome that I can play a solo, and you can play a solo, and you know, we're having some kind of conversation there. I would never argue that music is the universal language. Folks aren't going to hear music exactly the same way. But I can play a solo, and you can play a solo. Both of them matter. Neither one of them is more right or more wrong. And I can sense when maybe it's my turn, just based upon like how you're communicating. You know, there's going to be a high point to your solo. There's going to be a low point to your solo. There's going to be a place where things are more rhythmically active. Maybe you're playing in a higher tessitura on your instrument, and the group will follow you. You know, we're all in this together, and when it's your turn, everyone's going to support you. And when it's my turn, I'll know. Now, there is an agreed upon form generally in the music. We have things called lead sheets. You know, a lot of pieces we play have maybe the standard American song form is 32 bars long. There'll be an A section that's 8 bars long. There'll be an A section that's 8 bars long. There'll be a B section that's 8 bars long, and a lot of times we call that the bridge. It's something different. So you'll have A and A, similar phrases, and then a B, different chords, different idea. Then we'll go back to some version of A, and we'll just keep looping this over and over and over again until we decide we're done. And now that standard American song form, that comes out of like Tin Pan Alley. So that's a pretty new construction of music. But if we all know about that 32 bar form, and we know the tune, we can all get together and make music, and we can play for 4 minutes, or we can take that same form, put it in different feels, add some things, omit some things, play some backgrounds, extend some solos. We can take something that might be 3 minutes on one of those old 78 RPM records and turn it into something that could take an hour. And if you're on short notice with a new group of guys and you have only 6 or 7 charts and you got to fill 3 hours on a gig, you might do that.
You know, conversations, but we had before this interview told you about how we had a jazz group come in here that For some reason, their bass player was unable to join them. And they picked up a local bass player, upright bass player, and he comes in and I talked to him and I said, so have you seen the music? He goes, no. I said, do you know what you're playing tonight? He goes, no. They showed up, they handed him his music, they said, okay, you're gonna solo here, 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 and here. Here's the pieces we're playing tonight. You good? And he goes, yeah, I'm good. And it led me to that thinking of so many jazz groups that I've worked with and jazz artists. They're just so laid back, but they're very focused on the music. I mean, there's an intensity into the music, but they're very at ease with the performance and with what's going on in their world. Where does that come from?
I think it comes from the absolute freedom of creativity, being able to get out of a whole bunch of rules. I mean, we all feel great on a basic level when we're kind of allowed to express ourselves and do as we wish, and jazz gets us pretty close to that. Even in a big band setting where everyone has to play in certain ways together, you're still the person on your part, and you still get to express yourself, and you're highly valuable, and that's wonderful things. I think about in the classical realm, that's if we think of the symphony orchestra, that's a very mature art form. If let's say I'm a second violin player and trying to get the associate principal second violin spot in a major symphony orchestra, I'm probably going to take hundreds of auditions to get to that point where I'm sitting in that orchestra. And at that point, you were hired because the musical director thinks that you're going to be able to play in the style of that orchestra and all that. As a section player in a section that big, you play the same way as everyone else. And as a principal player, you decide how everyone plays. And there's nothing wrong with that. There's still some individual expression in that, but in jazz, it is more laid back because you know that whatever you bring to the table is yours and it's going to matter. You're going to contribute. And I think that's pretty magical.
How do you teach the young artists to embrace that freedom and to, especially like when they're creating their first solos and to let go of that structure of the music?
Maybe with one of the half-hour groups I work with at West, we're playing a tune that's just a 12-bar blues, something really simple and something that they need to know kind of inside and out if they want to take some auditions to get into district bands and all stay later on. People need to know the blues. And blues is a great way to explore tonality and how chords work, because a simple blues can be played with 2 or 3 different chords. That's it. Chords are collections of notes, and they move in ways that we all agree upon. And that's so we start with the blues, and we start with one note. And I'll just go over to the piano and I'll play a really simple blues, and I'll try to coax it out of the band. We'll just go down the row, so to speak. And we start off, everybody gets one measure. So we're helping everybody kind of keep time and place in the music, and everyone gets one measure and one note to play. That's day one when we're trying to improvise. And as the weeks go on, maybe we start with everyone taking 4 bars, 4 measures, and maybe you have 3 notes now. And we'll teach everybody eventually some pentatonic scales. And, if kids move into our hour group, or if I'm working with folks here at McKendree, we'll get into modes a little bit and start to see, some standard forms we can play over more advanced chord progressions like 2-5-1s. It's all about taking those logical steps and closing that gap between the creativity you have and the creativity you're able to express on your instrument. And by giving some constructs early on, some rules, eventually we don't need rules anymore, because you've learned all the nuggets, so to speak, that make it happen.
You learn the rules to break the rules.
That's right. I would argue that's what a school does. At a school, we learn about the past in the present so that we can make the future. We learn about the rules.
Yeah.
So we can later break the rules and add to the craft, bring more to humanity.
Well, to wrap up our time, would you play another song for us?
Absolutely.
You brought us another one by David William Brubeck, Miami. Love to hear it.
You got it.
Well, Michael, thank you for sharing your music and your time and your knowledge with us. It's been a real pleasure working with you today.
Likewise, and I appreciate working here with you. I think you're a wonderful creative mind, and it's my pleasure to be here today with you.
Michael Pond Jones, a Belleville, Illinois native, is the Director of Instrumental Music at Belleville Township High School West and Director of Jazz Studies at McKendree University. At West, he directs symphonic band, orchestra, jazz ensembles 3A and 3B, jazz band, the Marching Maroons, basketball band, and teaches Music 101 and Music 104, dual credit classes offered through the Department of Music at Southwestern Illinois College. Teaching assignments at McKendree University include jazz ensemble, jazz band techniques, and improvisation. Michael is also the Illinois Music Educators Association District 6 President. During his tenure at Belleville West, the jazz band has been selected to present at the 2019 Illinois Music Education Conference in Peoria, Illinois, received multiple first-place designations at the Eastern Illinois University Jazz Festival, and was selected as the 2020 Southwestern Illinois College Honors Jazz Ensemble. In addition to performing, teaching, and conducting, Michael has earned credentials as a nationally registered and state-licensed emergency medical technician, American Heart Association BLS instructor, and basic operations firefighter. He serves as a firefighter with the Villa Hills Fire Department, where he was selected as the 2018 and 2019 Firefighter of the Year. Thank you for watching from everyone at Campus Speaks. Keep your eyes out for more stories.
McKendree is more than a university. It is the pillar on which academic excellence is built. It is the place you can call home. It is where athletic prowess thrives. McKendree is a place where its educators are dedicated to the success of each student they teach, no matter the platform. McKendree is a community that gives back both locally and globally. McKendree is the place where you can make your dreams a reality. Make it possible. Make it matter. Make it McKendree.